there's three things that are really needed inside of any organization or for any like entrepreneur or business leader. Number one is a business coach. Number two is a peer group. And then the third thing is some sort of framework. EOS like changed my life.
Welcome back to another awesome podcast. And what you know about the Necessary Entrepreneur is when we're doing virtuals, it's all happening on one day. So welcome back to our Thursday, whenever this comes out. But I'm pumped about today's guest. It's Ryan Hogan. Why I appreciate him in the beginning. Number one, we came on and I said, man, your audio is on point. Thank you. But number two, he has an easy name to pronounce. Sometimes names are tough. So Ryan Hogan, thank your parents for giving you an easy name. He's a serial entrepreneur, a CEO, and a former Navy officer who has built, scaled, and transformed companies in deeply operational environments. Ryan's co-founded Hunt a Killer, what a cool name, a subscription-based mystery game company that has become one of the fastest-growing consumer product brands in America. After identifying a systemic gap in how leadership and talent are deployed in growth stage organizations, Ryan founded Talent Harbor. It's a firm focused on strategic talent solutions for rapidly scaling businesses. And if there's more, there is. What he does is he blends military discipline, founder grit, and people-centered leadership in a way that reveals what it really takes to lead teams, scale culture, and operate with clarity in complex environments. Ryan, welcome to the Necessary Entrepreneur.
Can you come on and do all my intros? Like I'll just, whatever I'm doing, you'll come in and do them? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I think I use this often, this self-deprecation move that I use. One day I may stop doing it, but, Toby Keith's not with us anymore. I'm not just a country music fan, but, the song inside the song, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. So if this is acceptable, I don't know if I could reproduce it, but, man, I'm pumped about having you on. The great energy that you have, us just getting to know each other, but you have such breadth in what you've done. From this experience of being in the military, but then scaling these businesses. And I call it a serial entrepreneur. Sometimes that's not the best connotation, but when you're scaling and building legitimate things, it is. So I'm pumped to let you share with us what you've learned, talk about your current business. But I think we're going to have a well-rounded conversation on what entrepreneurship used to be, what it looks like to scale and sell, but then what it is in this fast evolving, growing technological environment. So I'm pumped to have you on, man.
Yeah, no, I think we'll have some like great tidbits because like one of the things that's not in that intro is the bankruptcy, and that's like that's really that was real lessons learned at the lowest point in my life, and so we can cover a variety of topics.
Yeah, what do you do with that then? I mean, we attribute those when we're going through moments like that. It's massive failure in every way in our brains. Right? It's the ego death. It's what we're worried about, what people think about us. It's we fought so long and the dream didn't come to fruition for some reason. How do you look back on that moment now?
Yeah, I love what you just said there, where it's like the ego death. And when I look at kind of like who I am, just as a human today versus then, like I had this weird thing because I started off enlisted. I flew in the back of MH-53 Echo helicopters, and then I went through this commissioning program, eventually became an officer, drove ships for a few years, and now I'm the CEO of a unit out of Spokane, Washington. I'm actually flying out tonight to go do drill weekend. So 25 years of active duty experience. My first exposure to an organization was there's enlisted and there are officers. And like, those are the two types of people. And officers had to be a certain thing, put on a certain face. And then there were enlisted that got the work done. And so my first company, like I had this, it was a zombie infested 5K obstacle course race company. So like the craziest, weirdest company you could imagine. And I would come in every day in a suit and there was no rhyme or reason. I thought that's like who I had to be. I thought that's how I had to show up. And it really took the bankruptcy and like the ultimate failure to be like, dude, you just show up as a human and care about people and invest in their personal and professional life. And like the rewards from that go far beyond the growth and the things that they do for the organization. But for me, that it was a very, very low moment. I think when people hear bankruptcy, when it went public, it was like, oh, I'm so sorry for you, Ryan. And the reality is bankruptcy is actually the easiest part. After bankruptcy, everything goes silent. And what people don't see, it's the 12 to 18 months leading up to the bankruptcy where you're trying to sell the company, you're personally guaranteeing everything, you're constantly raising money, you're doing all of these things because you have such this deep belief in the company. And, once it all goes away, it's a pretty hard pill to swallow.
Is that because, I'm not even saying this is bad, is it because our ego gets tied up in the current thing we're doing all the time?
I think if you haven't experienced the ultimate failure or a failure of a magnitude like that, yes. So my first company that didn't really scale, but the first one where we really put energy into it, we raised some money, went out and bought $200,000 in t-shirts. And I had boxes in my 2-car garage going up to the ceiling. And I was like, if you build it, they will come. Nobody came. And those t-shirts didn't sell. And that's why the zombie event came, because I needed a way to move the t-shirts. But with Warwear and then even with Run for Your Lives, like the business was kind of my baby. Meaning like I was attached to the concept, I was attached to the idea, and I had a lot of emotion invested into like what we were actually doing. The rebirth post bankruptcy, I don't care what we're doing. And what's interesting is like, and I'm sure we'll talk about Hunt to Killer a little bit. The most common question I get today is like, how do you go from Hunt to Killer, this like sexy consumer brand doing really cool things, to talent acquisition? And my response is simple. Like my passion has nothing to do with the product or services that we're in. It has to do with the people that are inside of the organization solving hard problems every day. So, yes, I think that is a short answer. Yes, I think it's a very hard thing.
Yeah. And I guess it's a reset of what our identity means to us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and that's what I preach nowadays is like your identity cannot be tied into the brand. Like your identity cannot be the company. You have to understand what it is that you want out of life, what you want to accomplish. The business is just a vehicle. The only thing that business does is help you achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in life. And, pre bankruptcy, that wasn't it. Like my only goal in life was that brand. My identity were those brands. But there was a fundamental shift after.
Yeah. So, now this subscription model, Hunt a Killer, like we might jump all over the place. You know how sometime on podcast, it goes from A to Z. I'm not an A to Z. We take the conversation right where it takes us. So that you start Hunt a Killer, it's not about, they haven't moved beyond the question yet about how are you this or you that. You're like, no, it's who I am as a human. I'm going to take this human to whatever I do, whether I show up in the Navy on my weekends, whether I start a company and it scales, right? I figured out what I'm doing, what my direction is, but then Hunt a Killer, was there a period of 12 to 18 months that you were scaling your personal growth, your own mindset as a leader? What happened in the 12 to 18 months? I just know from my past, those moments are so critical. What did it teach you about the community you were building, about retaining customers, about building equity inside the company from people feeling like they have ownership and a sense of belonging? That 12 to 18 months I found in my past, I learned the most in those moments. So it doesn't have to be your moment, but was that similar?
Yeah, it was. And what's interesting is that there's probably 2 different 12 to 18 month periods for me. And number one was post bankruptcy. And there was 12 to 18 months of like rebuilding who I was and trying to figure out like, what do I want out of life? Who do I want to be? And that happened, and this sounds maybe a bit weird, but that happened through journaling. One of the most amazing things that I discovered is like writing, not necessarily for other people, but just writing for yourself and putting thoughts on paper or in today's environment on an iPad. The therapeutic outcome of that exercise was life-changing for me. And then with the 12 to 18 months, like once it was 3 years later, we launched Hunt to Killer, and we had a similar philosophy, which was let's do a live event again, because we had just got done scaling Run for Your Lives. That went from 0 to about 6 million in 18 to 24 months, and then ultimately just crashed. But that's what we knew. So 3 years I was like writing and rebuilding and just kind of like figuring out who I am in this world. And then we launched Hunt to Killer, and Hunt to Killer was the same sort of thing of like, hey, our event or our backgrounds are in events, so let's launch this as an event. And so initially it was a live event. We transformed a 200-acre campground into a living crime scene. And it was great, except we couldn't scale it. And so like the very first thing was with Run for Your Lives, we could put 15, 20,000 people through an obstacle course race in any given weekend. With Hunt a Killer, we had to cap it at 600 people because you can't have 1,000 people standing around a fake crime scene trying to investigate and interrogate suspects. And this was like some of the biggest transformations, which is we weren't attached to the business, and that allowed us to see things completely different. So it wasn't like, hey, how do we do more events, or how do we like, take the events and scale the events? It's like, hey, we found product market fit. We have something that people want. And what is that? We have armchair detectives. We've got this community of people that love solving crimes. How can we develop a different product for them? And so we pivoted into subscription box literally one day after the first event. First event we spent a year putting together. I think we made like $10,000. I had a partner in it, and so it'd be like $5,000 for a year's worth of work. Like we're not gonna be able to quit our day jobs. And we pivoted, like no questions asked, no emotional ties to like this needs to be an event company. And we got into subscription box. And that was history, because like after that, it was 0 to 55 million in 6 years. But it wasn't like subscription box only. It was this constant evolution and evaluation of like, where can we take this and what do we want to achieve?
Yeah. So what do you do now with this entrepreneurial brain that's learned all the hard lessons? What do you do? Do you create one idea at a time, stay focused on that, scale it, turn it over to other people, maybe have it exit and do it again? Do you do that? Or do you have multiple systems operating at the same time?
Mark, you're asking a question right now that I am addressing in real time. Because for me, like I think where I bring the most value in organizations is 0 to 1. I can get it probably from 1 to 3 at that point. And obviously Hunt a Killer got very big. I had an incredible leadership team around me that really helped kind of open up doors that I wouldn't have been able to on my own. But really, like me being able to find product market fit as fast as humanly possible and then getting out of the way is kind of what I've been processing over the last probably 3 years. But a lot of this is happening in real time, meaning that like the company that I co-founded called Talent Harbor, like we are scaling very fast right now. And every month, like I'm thinking to myself, like, when do I need to step aside? Because my personality is great for pre-product market fit, and maybe a little bit past that. Past that, it becomes destructive because I need problems to solve. And if there's no problems, then I wound up creating problems or like pushing the organization past its tipping point. So, my hypothesis right now is I do a podcast and I've got all these other things, and I'm trying to figure out how to pour my energy into those things and then have that energy kind of go across different organizations.
So you're talking about knowing oneself.
Yeah, it's only taken 41 years, but we're still working on it every day.
I was in Atlanta last week. I went to a conference of a friend of mine and for his organization, and went to lunch before I was flying out. And some of the guys that some of his close networking group friends said, "Hey, we go to lunch with us." I was like, "Guys, yeah, let me push the Uber back and all this stuff." And they were walking out and they're like, "Hey, are you going to join his thing?" And I went, "What do you mean? Join his thing?" And they're like, "Well, you're going to join the thing." And I said, "Guys, I don't know how to say this, but I've had this revelation recently. I break things. And people that are around me, I'm positive. I'm very optimistic. I bring massive energy to the thing. I believe we can do things far beyond what we've probably dreamt and envisioned. But I don't stop." Right? And so as you said that, I went, I think this is what he's talking about. And I even felt bad about myself. I had a moment. It's like, man, I build things. But I saw his organization he's building, and I will see the smallest micro improvements that can be made, and I will challenge those. And the system isn't ready for that level of massive impact every day.
No, like you got to let it breathe. I've done, I went to War College about 3 years ago and did all the personality assessments and everything as a part of one of their programs. But just this week, I redid a DISC assessment and I got debriefed on it. And what was interesting, so I'm very high in the DI, very, very low on the SC. And I don't know, I don't know what all of these things mean, but the feedback that I got was high D and high I are incredible for organizations only for a certain period of time, and otherwise they become destructive. And so you're absolutely right. Like we made mistakes last year with Talent Harbor. So our core issue right now is that we've got this unique model where it's subscription based. We took subscription from Hunt to Killer. And we said, hey, let's move that into business service world. Hunt to Killer spent like $1 million on recruiting. I was like, what a stupid industry. Sorry if there's any recovering recruit or current recruiters out there. But like, there's ways to do things differently in an industry that has not historically changed over the last 50 to 60 years. But our biggest issue, which isn't like no surprise, is that like our clients don't stay with us for the long term. Once we find them a role, then they put their account on pause. So we have this constant churn, and we were trying to solve for this last year, and we layered in staffing. And I was like, listen, we're just going to use the same machine we have right now, and we're just going to layer in staffing, and like, the amazing recruiting that we do, we can just translate that into some sort of staffing model. And like, I almost broke the organization last year because the organization was not ready for that. And like, do we get into that, or do we like solve the churn issue and all those things? We will eventually, but like, we need to get the systems and people and all these different things in place, before a knucklehead like me brings in 100 good ideas.
Yeah, right. I heard somebody, I don't know if it was Jeff Bezos or somebody, spoke to this, and he said, man, I'll have 100 great ideas all the time. And someone in the organization, someone on his board said, yeah, that's the problem. We need to work out the ideas you already had that were great. I think that's what we're sitting here talking about.
Yep. And I don't know if you use a strategy for that. Like, one thing that we've been doing, not necessarily since then, but we've been doing for a while, is parking lot. And so like, if there's something and we're like, hey, that's got some legs, so we put it in the parking lot. And for my brain, at least, like, it helps to know that it's in the parking lot. Like, I won't continue to think about it because I know it's captured somewhere, and I know eventually we'll come back. But historically, if I haven't captured it somewhere, then I'm just constantly like, we should do this, we should try this, we should tweak this, we should, whatever the case is.
So when you hired you don't want to call it recruiting, but when you built Talent Harbor up, when you launched it, is the fundamental problem, I'll throw it out here since you said, hey, if there's any recovering recruiters out here. But are you trying to solve the problem? What I've seen from afar, I have never used a recruiting company one time for my companies, because I stood back and I identified and saw a problem, and I said, hey, wait a minute, hold on. You're bringing candidates based upon resumes. This company is saying we need them to be able to do this. This is what we expect their education to be. This is what the past. You're hiring based on a resume. And what I found in my business is those resumes now in 2026, they don't translate. And so what I've consistently saw was, okay, let's say somebody makes $220,000 a year as whatever position. That recruiting company is incentivized to place someone.
Oh,
they're not incentivized for what the performance looks like over 5 or 10 years.
That's super. Keep going.
So, but I mean, I've never even talked about this because I'm not insulting people in their business, but they make huge commissions. I mean, these recruiters are making 75 or 100% of the first year's salary in these situations from what I saw. And I went, hold on, companies, all of us, if you find someone that's going to be integral in my company, that is going to perform the functions, but that's also going to be this cultural fit and help us lift up the company and grow and be here for a decade, I'll give you 2 years' salary if you could guarantee me those outcomes. And what I found, though, I talked to some recruiters, and I want to hand it back to you. Here's the thing that was really nasty and dirty that really irritated me that I found out about the business. They keep that person that they placed in the job, they keep them in their pipeline for other positions too. And I went, that is unacceptable. So the cultural thing about like, is this the right human to come work at this company? So,
yeah, you just listen, like, number one, love you as the hype man. And then number two, if I could just bring you in on all my sales pitches, like, that would be great too at this point. That's it. Like, the recruiting industry is broken. When you start to think about contingent-based recruiting, regardless of the percentage, but let's just look at contingent-based business model recruiting, where the recruiter does not get paid unless they place. incentives are not aligned or interests are not aligned at that point, because when a recruiter comes in, just because you sold or you signed a contract, that doesn't mean they've closed you. They are salespeople, and what they're trying to do is close one of their three. Usually it's three. What'll happen is they'll go to market, very quickly collect 3 resumes, give you 3, and then they start selling you on why one of those 3 is the best candidate that you've ever seen, because they don't get paid until you actually hire. And the other problem here is only about 50% of the searches they do they actually make a placement. And so what you're doing with that huge retainer is you're subsidizing all the free work that they did for all their other clients or all the other people that at least signed contracts. The recruiting industry is broken. There's you talked a little bit about getting hiring right and getting hiring wrong. The reason I focus so much on the model is because all the recruiters say the same thing. It doesn't mean that they're all the same level, but let's just assume that they were, and that recruiting is a commodity. It's not, but it's very hard to go into an organization with like, we're better. Why? Because this is our process. Well, that's what the last shop said. Okay, well then we've got a different model that actually aligns interests. So believe us there. And then if you like us, obviously know you'll come back to us. But when I've gotten hiring wrong in the past, it's not because I couldn't read a resume. It's because I brought in the wrong human. They were not aligned with the core values or core behaviors of the organization. And that's 50% of the battle. So when recruiters are going out there, if they're not asking you like, what are your core values and what are some of the actions and decisions that actually exhibit that core value, and they're not diving deep into that, all they're doing is just going to Indeed, LinkedIn, grabbing a few resumes, and then trying to collect a quick 50 grand, for sending them or forwarding them to you.
Are you like the best dating app for recruiting?
Basically. It's so funny you say that, because I'm not a recruiter. I know what's wrong with the industry, but I am by no stretch a recruiter. I partnered with an amazing recruiter. So I'm like the visionary, the business, the strategy. And she's like, we built an entire proven process around 25 years. She says what you just said all the time. She was like, recruiting's basically like a dating service. And that's the reality. It's like, you're trying to find the right fit for the organization.
Seems like maybe professional managers obfuscated their responsibility of developing organizations, and they outsourced it to recruiters and paid them big money, versus maybe taking your SaaS model and letting you give them the best information, the best candidates to utilize to do the hiring the way that they should be doing it, which should be integral with what the culture is of their company.
100%. Like, looking at resumes is cheap. Anybody can look at a resume and say like, oh, like, do they have this many years experience in this industry, whether it's adjacent or the actual industry? Great. Okay, this person is qualified. Qualification or qualifying candidates, 10, 15% of the battle. Like, what questions are you asking? Do they have the core traits, the core behaviors? What did they actually accomplish? Like, we focus on sales roles. And so like, we want to know like, what did they accomplish at their last organization? What tools did they use? What strategies did they use? Are they a hunter? Are they a farmer? Are they used to leads coming to them? What was the value proposition? What was their pitch? Like, that is good recruiting. And the other thing that we haven't talked about is real recruiting is not posting on job boards. Like, that was true both 10 years ago, and it's even more true today, because what's happening is that there are like 3 top platforms for candidates, AI platforms. They go in, they put their resume, the AI platform looks at the resume, cleans it up, and then searches all the job boards that are open that it thinks align, and it'll go out and apply you to 1,000 different jobs. Then you've got companies, same thing, which they've got AI in there, and the AI is reviewing all these resumes. Job boards is not where you find talent. Where you find talent is databases, and then going after, it's called active outreach to passive candidates. But once you know what you want, you go hunt, you go find that person, because that person, that diamond in the rough, is probably not logged into LinkedIn out of the millions of job descriptions that are out there. And
they already have a job, and they're doing that job very well for someone else.
So that's a hot take, and every time I say that online, I get like just eviscerated. But I
don't care what they
reality.
Say. Some of my best hires have come from there. 2 years ago, I'm sitting at a Cincinnati Bengals game. Some attorneys we do business with, he's like, "Hey man, I got an extra ticket. You want to come?" I was like, "Sure, I'll come." And there was a girl that was dating his son that was at the game. I'd never met her before. After the game, I'm with him for 3 hours. After the game, I text him and I said, "Tell me she's not as talented as I believe she is as a human." And he went, dude, if I had a role inside my company right now, I'd hire her. And I said, will you put me in contact with her? I didn't have a role designed for her when I met her. I'm just looking for quality people all the time.
Yes. That's your job. Like, that's my job. That's your job. Like, it's so interesting how we think about recruiting, because it's like, have a need to go find somebody. The reality of like your and I's job is like, every time we go to a networking event, every time we're just out in public, like, we're evaluating people of like, would they be good for the team? Like, that's great recruiting.
That's it. And I'm starting to realize, I was in a room about a month ago with one of the gurus of marketing and all this, went to dinner with them, me and 8 or 9 people. The guy that was shooting content that night, somebody else had contact, and they brought him in from Florida. I saw him, a 27-year-old guy, just quality and on fire. I went, man, that guy's quality. He just happened to come up to me afterwards, and he's like, hey, man, can you tell me a little more about you? Like, you were one of the most impactful people in the room. Like, tell me about what you have going on. And we sitting there and we're talking. Just so happens, I'm going to Atlanta for an event a month later, and I reach out to him. It's like, hey, man, can you come do this? My team's busy. He's like, absolutely. I'm flying to Miami tonight, and I'm flying back tomorrow night, looking at this huge LED screen I think I'm going to buy for my auditorium. And him and his team of AI folks and what they're building, they're driving down from lunch from Palm Beach, right? What I identified in the room was, this guy is talented, but here's what talent is. It's the way he thinks. It's his mindset. It's the problem solving. It's the attitude. It's all the stuff. And so here's a question I have. We used to think intelligence was an MBA from Wharton. We used to think that if you went to an Ivy League school, you're just smarter, you're better, you're more prepared, you have the DNA. What do you think intelligence and smarts really is? Because I've been talking to people like, are they smart? I went, what are you asking me? What is smart? Because I have my definition of smart, and it doesn't align with the way that we used to give people the smart term.
I mean, when you think about, actually, let me start with this. Some of the best hires I've ever made had zero college education. They were just hustlers. They were just problem solvers. Like, to me, it's about care and effort. Those are two intangible traits that you cannot train for. You know, if there's some background experience and maybe they have some process, like, maybe that means as an organization, you have to train them a little bit less. But if they've got care and effort, like, whether you have to spend a week, a month, maybe a few months, like, training them and bringing them up to speed, I would take that all day long over some sort of college degree. The thing with degrees is, like, one thing it does show is like, they've put in the effort. They've went through the steps. But I never look at like where they went to school as like their level of intelligence. It's just like, you know, they put in the effort and they're up there, and that is what it is. But I've never seen that the deciding factor between like a successful hire or an unsuccessful hire.
Yeah. So, I mean, wouldn't you like somebody in an organization that's been there for 5 years and they've consistently improved and received promotions, gone to new levels, built teams? Like, that's an exact real world practical application of that's what they're going to do in your business.
What a great point, because we were just talking about resumes, right? And like, you're looking for industry experience and you're like, okay, like, do they have the industry experience? That's something that most business owners won't look at in the resumes, which is like, where did they start and where did they finish? Because that is a very telling thing. If they were at an organization, let's say they were an account manager. If they were at an organization for 6 years and the only title that they carried for that 6 years was account manager, like, that's going to be one of the first questions I ask is like, you spent a lot of time in this role. Like, what happened? What did you do? Things like that. There's so many like micro signals on resumes that you can look for that go far beyond that. This was my college, this was the job, and these were like the years of those tenures.
Yeah. How does this conversation about intelligence, education, experience, how does this line up with your experience of 25 years in the Navy?
Yeah. I don't know if this is going to be the answer that you're looking for. I do think there needs to be a healthy dose of both. And meaning, like, if you look at my military career, I started off enlisted. I flew in the back of helicopters for the first 8 years, got into a commissioning program. As a part of that commissioning program, I went to the University of Maryland, went to the business school there, and then got my commissioning. After that, after that, I went to Naval War College, and I spent 10 months in Naval War College getting my master's. And like, if you were to look, if I ever had a resume, like what you would see in my resume is like, started as E1. I was E1 twice, by the way. That's a story over beers, not necessarily for this podcast. But I was an E1 twice, and now I'm an O4. And so like, there's this career progression. What did I accomplish? Where did I start? Where did I go? And then speckled all throughout there between the lines is like, the pursuit of professional development, because I think that is incredibly important when you're looking at a resume or a candidate or something like that. Not just like, did they get it? Did they want it? And, did they excel at their last job? But it's like, are they thirsty for more knowledge? And are they continuing to develop themselves on a professional level? That can come through like mastermind groups, Vistage groups. It can come through any real type of continuing education. But I do think that there's an importance for having some of those bullet points on a resume.
So as a part of Talent Harbor, you really base this system on EOS, which is an entrepreneurial operating system. Go deep into it. I mean, there are people that have opinions on EOS all over the place, right? I'm not somebody who we don't operate with any of that framework, but as a part of EOS, right? You'll find a lot of the things inside my company, but I haven't embraced the structure in those areas. A lot of people who've been on the podcast has. Give us a high level exposure to EOS. What's your experience? What you've seen the benefits, and then why is Talent Harbor, why is it based upon EOS, like an EOS centric organization?
So a lot of this stuff comes out of the bankruptcy conversation, which is there were three and this is all retrospect. So I wasn't living in that company saying, oh, these are the three ingredients that I was missing. Like this has all been, 10, 12, 15 years of a personal and professional journey to come to realize this. There's three things that are really needed inside of any organization or for any like entrepreneur or business leader. Number one is a business coach. It's critical to have someone that can talk to you, tell you, like speak the truth and say things that your team won't tell you. Number two is a peer group. So a group of people that have been there, done that can help you like find the minds before you actually step on it. Game changer. And I had both of them through Vistage. I'm still in Vistage. I'm also an EO, but been in Vistage for 9 years now. And then the third thing is some sort of framework. So it doesn't matter if it's EOS, like it sounds like you've got your own framework. It's just that EOS like changed my life. And we had a professional EOS implementer that came through our group about 8 years ago with Vistage. It's how I found out about it. We self-implemented, transformational for the company, which was great. And that was probably around like the 5 to 7 million mark. Once we got to 15, we were like, we can afford to go get another, or we can afford to actually bring an implementer inside of the organization. So we went from self-implementing to bringing in an expert. And I'll never forget this day one. She was like, we were cocky and we were like, we know what we're doing. We've been self-implementing. She was like, what the hell are you guys doing? When she looked at our VTO and everything else. And we went through a completely different, incredible transformation as an organization. Because like what EOS does is, in very simple terms, when I was studying business, we would learn about vision and mission and values and like all these like fundamentals, but there was nothing that ever actually like tied all of these things together. And the thing that business operating systems like EOS do is they take all of these things that are very normal, like very natural concepts that have been taught for generations, and it brings them into like a systematic framework so that the organization can set the right goals, get the right people working on the right things, and make sure that everybody in the organization understands why you exist, the core behaviors that drive that. And then why that's so important for us today and what we do is like, if we go and we recruit for an organization that's running on EOS, we already know so many things to be true. We know they have a VTO, a vision traction organizer, and they've got documented a vision, a documented niche, a documented core values. And we were talking about this earlier, but that's half the battle. So if we walk into an organization and they don't know their core values and they're just kind of all over the place, it's impossible for us to do good work. Another recruiting shop would take that all day long and they'll go get 3 resumes based upon the experience. They'll try and sell you on it. Not us. Like we'll say we can't help you because we understand that over half the battle is finding the right human. And if you don't understand like why your organization ticks or the core behaviors that are driving those factors, then like it doesn't matter who you use. It's not going to be a successful placement.
Yeah, I agree. When I went to this event to support, somebody who's become a friend and he's building his organization and his brand and it's doing this for folks. And somebody asked me, they said, "Hey, are you going to become a member of this and do this?" I said, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to, but I will support him and what he's building all day because the 3 days that I sat through and engaged and saw from the outside, it's positive and it's good." So what I will say is everyone needs to find something like this. They need systematic structure, whether it's one organization can do those or a group of people. Because what I told them is I said, y'all, it's very hard for us to find the system we need in our hometown. It's very hard. And usually the networks that we built, they're not big and strong enough yet that we have our own board of directors and resources in our personal network. So you got to go find a system to do it. And if you find a system that's positively influencing you that has those 3 tiers, go all in because there's many of them. And I said, guys, this doesn't be my thing, right? It doesn't have to be, but this is a good thing. So I'm 100% on board with what you're saying. Take me through how you evaluate personally, which goes also into your recruiting platform. How do you evaluate a hire for a culture fit? And a part of that is, what are the red flags do you think we ignore? Us founders ignore when we're trying to do that.
Yeah, usually what we ignore is our well, maybe we pay too much attention to it. When I've gotten hiring wrong in the past, like my gut told me to hire that person. And it's because like I felt some sort of like chemistry or connection or like something was there. And I avoided anything else, like any part of the evaluation or any part of the questionings. And so I think one of the reasons recruiters are good is because they're kind of that first filter and they have no emotional ties to this. Like, did it meet the criteria? Yes or no? And so the founder or the hiring manager will never even see those people. Yeah. What was the
So the first one is like, how do we evaluate a hire for a culture fit?
Yeah.
Without, because we ignore the red flags when we're trying to go through this, but like, what's the real approach to do that for a cultural fit? So if it shouldn't be like, oh, I like them, and because that's when we get hiring wrong. Like, oh, they're like me. Oh, I could go right. That's bad, and that's usually who we hire.
Yes. Yeah. And I think like what we do here at Talent Harbor is we create a whole list of questions specifically around those core behaviors. The reality is like there is a lot of like nuance to hiring. So there's some things that are very binary, very black and white. Do they have this experience? Did they answer this question right? Did I get some red flags off of this one? The reality is like culture fit is really hard because what you're evaluating is like the things that they're saying versus the things that like, do you believe them? So I'll give you some examples of this, which is number one, we don't give away the core values right out of the gate because we're trying to get a sense of who that human is. So we might say like, what are some values that you hold very high when you're operating on a team or amongst your other teammates? And what we're doing is we've got a list of, call it 3 to 7 for that organization. So we know what we're generally looking for. And we're just trying to see if like there's some spirit or essence between what they're saying and what we already know. And then after that, we go deep. And so this is where we do start getting into the organization's core values. Number one for us is go-givers, meaning that like we just have this deep belief that if we continue to put value in the world and create amazing relationships, that like the universe will repay. And we do that without any expectation for reciprocation. And so we might go in there and might be like, hey, what would go-giver mean to you? Like, what is in your core? What does that mean to you? And as we start going deeper and deeper, like we're getting deeper into that specific core value. So it might be like, okay, great. That sounds amazing. Now give me an example of an action or behavior or a decision, something in your past professionally where you exhibited that core value. And this is where it gets nuanced because you have to be able to grade, judge, determine whether what that person telling you is correct or not. But I'll give you some indicators. Number one is they will light up. Like you will see their facial expressions light up. You will see them get energy. And generally like that's a good tell that they're not completely full of crap. The other thing is, how detailed is the story? And if it's not detailed enough, then you can start asking follow-up questions to get them to go deeper. And you're trying to figure out, like, is this story true or not? And the more details there are with the story and the more they light up, the more it probably is that, like, they're being honest about whatever line of questioning that is.
I'm going to try to reduce recruiting and hiring down to one statement, and I'll let you expand on it or say it's wrong. In hiring, the only thing I'm trying to do is figure out how people make decisions.
I like it. Let me ask you this. The way they make decisions, like, can you derive, because so when I think of decisions, and I agree with you here, like, because if I can figure out how someone makes decisions, I can figure out their ethics, their morals. I can figure out their kind of decision making process in that. One of the things that I care equally about is the effort that they're going to put into it. Meaning that, like, even if their decision was all jacked up, if I know that they are going to operate very fast and be unafraid to fail, and they're going to figure it out, like, I love that. So as long as a part of, like, your hypothesis there of, like, I just want to know how they make decisions, as long as however you interview and vet, as long as you're getting a sense of, like, how much hustle and grind, and this sounds weird, but kind of like bravery, because there's a lot of people that are afraid to fail, and those types of people will hold your organization back, because you'll never move, and they won't make decisions because they don't want to make the wrong one. I would rather have someone make the wrong decision and then course correct, the next day versus take 3 weeks to make that decision.
Okay. I'll continue to vibe around this. And the reason why I've arrived there, because you're not wrong. I mean, it's like, what are you going to do after you make the decision? But if I can find out how people make decisions, if I can figure that out, I can realize if the way they make their decisions, does it fit culturally into our company, but does it fit this role as well? And then, but also what I found is we all have these seasons in our life. And those seasons a lot of times affect how all in you are, how much effort you're giving right now, what your mood or your attitude is. I mean, there's a lot of tough things that happen in our lives. That could affect how they show up. But usually what's not going to change is the level of intelligence or brilliance or decision-making that person possesses, that they're currently, I'm not talking about ability, I'm talking about what their capability is.
Yep.
That's why I went there on it.
I love it. And, like, I have a very real example of someone that I've been trying to recruit for the last 12 months. I'm sure she won't listen to this. Hopefully not, because then I'm in big trouble. But if she does happen to catch it, I'm still trying. When I met her, and this is what was so incredible about what you just said, is that's a place that they were at in their life. But I saw exactly what you just described, like the decision-making process, and like from the 4 or 5 conversations that I've had with them, I know who they are and I know what their capability is. And it was like the way that they were showing up at that point was just based upon a season in their life. And I got an understanding of, like, why they were there. I love what you just said there. One question for you, like, what would you do in that case if they weren't in the season where they were willing to give all, but you knew that they were the right person? Like, would you pull the trigger then, or what would you do?
I'd go deep, I think, into the season. Like, I go very, very vulnerable when I'm serious about bringing somebody on that's going to be high impact for my companies. I set the stage real quick to go into an environment about the things that do make them tick. Once I establish, like, hey, this person sees around corners. It's like, if I have somebody that sees around corners, that can project the things that are already going to happen beyond what's happening right now, that's special, unique ability and talent that they have. And so I go to figure out and say, because let's go back to the moment when during your bankruptcy, right? Or go back to 2008 when my real estate company, I was all in. I'm 3 weeks away from bankruptcy and losing everything. I'm behind on all my bills. Credit scores suck, right? The only thing I knew how to do right then, let me go sell something so maybe I can catch up on some bills so this dream can come to fruition. What I know is that, I think you touched on it earlier, like, give me people who have come through the fire.
Yes.
What I accept about the fire is all the decisions that are being made in the fire and all the behavior. It's not going to be awesome because you're actually, as a human, like, you're learning if you're going to be forged coming out of that. Like, is this person going to come out of it and be stronger, a stronger version of themselves? And if that's the case, it's going to be because we made a lot of mistakes we wouldn't make again, right? And in those seasons, the thing I am happy about is that I had the resilience that I kept going. But if someone would have talked to me in those seasons, I probably would have been like a blubbering idiot.
Yeah.
Right. And what would have probably come out of me was just like survival. So I try to find out who they are as a human, because if I believe in my organization and I would hold myself to high esteem as a leader, then I'm going to be part of the catalyst that like reawakens them. That is going to give them environment to really fulfill what I see as their capability. So I appreciate the hardships. I appreciate when someone's actually going through it. And if they can be vulnerable and tell me about what they're going through it, I will sit down and say, hey, listen, we don't want to have this reflective thing that we beat up on ourselves, but knowing what you know now, would you do the same thing again?
Yeah.
And then work.
Yeah.
That's it. Work through that process, because the best human beings to lead organizations, it's not that I'm looking to change every day, but I walk into a room and I walk into a company, show me where I'm wrong. Show me the errors that I have. Show me the weaknesses that I have, because the ego's gone. I want to take that and crush and grow right now. So I think this is the core of what I'm talking about.
You know what's interesting? We just had a conversation about this internally, maybe about a month ago. We've been hiring from a certain shop, and we've started to do some analysis or some assessment of like, why is that? And what we've realized is one of the shops is like incredibly cutthroat, and it's just churn and burn. And so like there's people that make incredible money at this firm. But at the end of the day, like they're selling their soul to get there. And it's burning folks out. And what's interesting is like, we've kind of developed this hypothesis, and like, this is going to sound stupid because adversity is probably the biggest reason that I'm where I'm at today, which is like, if I didn't experience those things and like be able to get back up, then like, you know, I won't say I'm numb to things at this point, but I can tolerate quite a bit of stress.
You have a high threshold of pain.
Yes, incredibly high threshold, and not like braggadocious. It's because I've made so many stupid decisions in the past that I put myself in positions where like it was either keep going or give up, I guess. But it's like, if you can find those things where like someone pushed through, like it may not have been the culture for them, but like they've already had that adversity in their lives, and maybe that's not the culture that they're looking for, but they've been through it and they've been able to succeed. I don't know. We just have this interesting hypothesis internally right now with like where we're doing our own searches and the organizations that we're targeting, because we're getting world-class talent right now, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. Are you finding you're getting the world-class talent from the people that went through the churn and burn, or that's bad?
No, that went through it, because like and came through the other side, I should say, like went through it, succeeded, but ultimately at some point hit a brick wall because like it was just way too much. And their ability to be successful in an enterprise like that and face that adversity, like everybody's going to burn out at some point. And I'd almost make an argument that, you know, my bank, I wrote a blog on this a long, long time ago as part of the self-therapy, but like I wrote this blog and the title was I Chose to Fail. And the whole premise was like, you can go pretty low. Like folks out there, like there's a guy I'm talking to right now and helping him work through some cash flow issues. And he was like, it's all over. And I was like, what, have you missed any payments yet? He's like, no. And I was like, dude, you're like 18 months from it being all over. Like every time I thought there wasn't another level, we dropped down and be like, oh, okay, well, this is still uncomfortable, but like, we're not dead yet. And I think a lot of business owners don't understand, not that should be the goal, but a lot of business owners don't understand that like, you kind of choose to fail, because like you either throw in the towel and say like, this is it, or you just keep fighting through. So anyhow, long-winded, like, you know, I think having that adversity, being able to persevere through it is incredibly important. And those are some folks that we look for.
Yeah, I heard a lady, I don't know who she was, but she was one of the first 30 hires at Apple. And people were, you know, there's this it's a conundrum about, was Steve Jobs good or was he bad? We can come up with all these things, all these iPhones we have in the technology, without a forward thinker who is determined as him, who's crazy as him. We don't have the thing. right? But what did it take? How many things did he break? How many people did he ruin to get there, right? But there was a lady, one of the first 30 hires, and she talked about, she's like, listen, he was the most difficult person that I ever worked for. And most days that I worked for him were not fun. And she said something like, she used a percentage. She's like, it broke 85% of the people that worked for him and came through the company. But for the 15% that weren't broken like me, it gave me the life I have. That's tough to put that together and deal with. But then I take back and I'm like, okay, there's personal responsibility here. There's personal responsibility and choice to say, how much do I want? What's the type of life I want to live? What threshold of pain am I willing to accept? How deep am I willing to go on self-awareness? How exposed am I willing to make my ego because I want the exchange for this life? And we shouldn't tear down organizations or situations or new startups just because we don't like it or we don't fit there, right? There's a personal responsibility to choose.
Yes. 100. And like, I have this conversation a lot of like, there's no good or bad or right or wrong when it comes to company culture. Like, you know, and Apple's an example of that. Tesla's an example of that. SpaceX, like you've got these like maniac founders. You said this earlier, like without that, we would not have much of the things that we have today. And then you've got the opposite side. Like, I don't know why I always think about Zappos in this, but like Zappos used to be like, oh, like it's all customer centric. And if you don't want to be here after 3 months, we'll pay you $25,000 to like literally just go away if you don't want to be a part of this culture. There's no right or wrong in this. And it's really a matter of like what drives innovation and what makes that organization successful. I have thought about this though a lot lately, and I haven't come to a conclusion. What types of organizations have been developed and been like incredibly successful from an innovation other standpoint where it did not have that type of culture? For some reason,
there aren't many. There aren't many.
I've been like brainstorming on this for the last couple months.
There aren't many, and so I don't have an answer to is it good or not. I just look at, and I'm trying to get back. I'm just looking at data, and the thing is like, well, don't you have empathy for the tough? It's like, well, kind of, but we're forged. The future great sword to go into battle is forged out of these failures and bad experiences we all have had, right? If you're saying the tough parts of your life, you couldn't have been this person talking today with the mindset, with now having the understanding to go start these other companies that are benefiting society. What I know is I'm going to attribute this with parents today. It seems like what parents always want. Parents always want their kids to just level up and they want their life to be better than theirs. You hear that generation after okay, great. That's awesome. As companies, the best companies, we want to lift people up and let me give you a vehicle that also gives customers and clients what they want, but also improves your life and allows you to develop and allows you to maybe create financial independence and you to have a better family. But here's the problem where we're at in society now with families, with parents, with kids, and with leaders now coming up. Part of what they mean where they want their kids or people to have a life better than theirs. Our country is so rich now, and it is so filled with opportunity and easier than it's ever been to live a good life, that a part of the thing that they're saying about I want them to have a better life is they're removing the adversity. And how we've become who we are sitting here is through the adversity. So it is very admirable that the goal of wanting people to have a better life, to make their life easier. But the only way my life has become easier is by me improving myself as a human and going through hard moments. I don't know how we can replace this experience and have the same outcome.
No, and frankly, I don't think you can. And that I've been trying to figure this out. This is such a relevant and like topical conversation because like I even think about that with my own organization, and I think where I've like fallen on the spectrum is like I think there's a way to have like care and empathy, but also like a high expectation, and that's kind of the balance that I've had is like we will care, we will have empathy, and we will pour into you. Like we will invest in your professional development. We'll have an understanding of what's going on in your personal life. We will be there to support you while at the same time, the expectation is this. And like times aren't always, great. We went through a growth spurt in probably November, December, and like it was stressing out the organization. And like, like I could have said, pull back, or like, let's do this or let's do that. I'm like, no, like this is why we do all the other stuff, is so that we rise to these moments. And everybody got through, and we got through, and it was great. But I think about that often of like, do you have to be a dick? Do you have to be like hard to like get someone through? And I don't even know where I fall on that today, because especially the military.
Yeah. So we're talking about then leadership, right? What is the perfect leadership style? Is it a John Maxwell book? Is it listening to some of the most hard and rigid David Goggins podcasts, right? I think everybody's searching for the truth and right. And unfortunately, if you're leading an organization, you got to go out and find it. I think you have to decide what your template is and stamp the company. Whether I'm right or wrong, I'm standing up in a sales meeting the other day, and there's 50 or 60 people from my company there. And I said, you all, what we have to understand is my job and my role as a CEO is to create an environment for excellence to occur. And that excellence to occur is every one of us showing up every day and realizing our first job as this company, it is to lift us up and make sure that we are going out into the marketplace and delivering an elite level of whatever we say we're doing. That is job number one. Here's job number two. We just happen to be a company when hard things are going on. We step next to you and put our arm around you and lift you up as well. But that is not our exclusive job. Our exclusive job is what the job of this company is. It is for us to excel in that role, to make sure we execute and we perform on what that is. And thankful we have a culture that also celebrates us and picks us up in hard times. It's not the second one first. I don't believe so. People could argue with me. I'm open for debate on it.
Well, I want to that's like where I'm starting to like, that's the conclusion I've been, and I told you this earlier, of like, I've been thinking about this long and hard over the last few months of like, what organizations out there that had like soft is probably not the best word, but like they leaned more on care and empathy than they did to driving innovation. And like you, and obviously the question for you was in the moment, but I've spent 3 months on it, and like, I've not been able to identify where it was like, it was all about just like Care Bears and rainbows and everything else. Like, no, like the organizations that succeed are the ones that like are forged and are battle tested. And then that makes me go ahead.
Good. This is how I know how, because we're as leaders being held accountable for everybody's performance. Our employees are holding us accountable for making sure we maintain and grow this company that they can thrive in. The consumers are holding us accountable to deliver A+ in everything that we do. We are evaluated in our jobs on the performance of the company. First, that's it. Then it was a great place to work and all that. There is no great place to work and us to care about each other if we are not performing at an excellent level.
Yeah. And like, I probably have a great example from Hunt to Killer days. Like for your audience, like go to Glassdoor. Like you will see some ridiculous things about me. And I don't think I'm a tyrant. I do think that there was a certain point in the organization where we crossed that threshold of like, we went from like being incredibly performance focused and like, what are we here to do and what are we going to do, to like, we were way too much on it's all about care and this is a great place to be. And like, what was interesting about that is like, once that dynamic like started to shift, the culture was really no longer there. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much I have to say on that, but it's like, it's interesting as we kind of process this in real time.
Yeah, I think if we can finish on this, and because we're wrapping up our time. I mean, I could sit here and go on this stuff for an hour or two, man. I think it's awesome, the mindset and perspective that you have and relevance to the world. But, I do love when people live better lives. I do. I love seeing people win, man. I have a growth mindset. There's nothing about anything scarce in my mind at all. At all. It is, I think kindness is giving honest, transparent feedback. Because without it, there's no growth if people that I'm responsible to lead. I can do it in a caring, kind way. But if that person isn't willing to go down the journey, it's not going to feel kind. And you don't do it overnight with one big meeting. You do it in small incremental steps in every interaction you have with that human. But if you lose transparency and honesty and within a company, and all of a sudden you give them a pink slip one day and they're looking around, they're like, what? That wasn't kind. So
that was me, by the way. I've gotten coached on this, and I continue to work on this to this day. My biggest issue, probably some of my early companies, was that exact thing, which was like I tolerated, because I didn't want to have the tough conversations. I tolerate a lot. And what's the next step out of it? Like once it gets to that point, there's no coaching anymore. It's just out. And so the situation you just talked about, like I've lived that with friends. I've lived that. And that's not the place. Like, and that's why, like, more frequent conversations and coaching is like so important to me this day, is because I don't want to get back to a place of where here's a pink slip, it's a surprise, and you've been screwing up for the last 3 months.
What a way to end it. Since I'm going to hand it back to you, because we're not going to end up on screwing up, right? But I'm going to hand it back to you. Everybody's from our audience is going to find out about you as we collaborate and put posts out and all micro content. But I'm going to hand it back to you to wrap it up. We're here in 2026. There's just craziness happening around AI. There's efficiency all over our world. We're saying that human engagement's still going to win, and it's number one. I think everyone is, there's a lot of people who are scared. There's a lot of people confused. But I look at it as what an opportunity to change your life in a shorter time frame than was ever possible for the average human. But I want to hand it back to you to say, Ryan, give us the state of the union as we wrap up for how you're seeing where we're at right now here in 2026. It could be what you're excited about, what you see as the future, or just whatever you just thought about this morning.
Yeah, I think, well, since you brought up the AI thing, I'll talk about that just real quick. There's a lot of fear that's being, that's coming from this whole notion of AI. When we think about AI, we think about how do we make our teammates' lives better? How do we serve our clients better? What platforms exist that we can take off the shelf that already have AI included and things like that? I'm not going to say AI is a nothing burger, because it's already had massive impacts and massive innovation on everything that we do. I will say that a lot of the hype that's been driving this fear has been coming from the people that need to go raise the money to continue to build servers and build power infrastructures and everything else. I think the day's coming where there's going to be a lot of things that we do on a daily basis that AI is going to be taken care of. Look, we used to do our balance sheet in checkbooks, or we used to write down logs and a P&L in a paper. Then we did it in Excel. Then we did it in QuickBooks Online. So will things continue to evolve? Yes. Will they evolve faster? Most likely. Is the world over tomorrow and all jobs going away? Absolutely not. And I think that organizations that can stay focused on what they're doing and then kind of take things that are happening and bring them into their organization are the ones that are going to be winners. Frankly, I think some of the ones that are going to be losers are going to be the ones that are going and building 50 AI agents, thinking that all this stuff's going to solve all their problems tomorrow, because they're going to lose focus on why they exist in the first place. So I think technology and AI is an enhancement, not a replacement. That's just my humble opinion. Next year, maybe we're all fired and robots have taken over the world.
And they'll change what was said in it.
There we go. Oh gosh, then they're coming after me.
Ryan Hogan, hey, I appreciate you being on, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. This was a really fun conversation.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot.